It is your job to tell me how this horse is thinking, what this horse is feeling. Like, you had to pay a lot of attention and do a lot of detailed work.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Amplify Horse Racing podcast. We are so excited for you to join us. At the time of recording and at the time that this is released, it is really the heart of summer, which means that Caitlin and I are doing a lot of traveling at the moment. And so it's great that we could squeeze in an episode. And Caitlin, you're about to head out to the East Coast and then the West Coast, and you just survived a hurricane. I'm glad that you're okay and everything with your family and horses is all good, right?
Yes. Yeah, everything is good. It was a stressful week without some amenities that you definitely take for granted, such as power and electricity and things like that. But no, we're good now. To Haskell on Thursday and then get back Sunday and head out on Wednesday to Sonoma for 2 weeks to cover the Sonoma Horse Park shows, their summer classic shows, which are the last 2 weeks of July. So yeah, very excited for that. It's going to be a new experience for the agency.
That is so cool. I love that you guys have expanded in so many different avenues of the equine industry, and very cool that you get to be in New Jersey for the Haskell Stakes, which
I always love going out there. Anybody who's not been to Monmouth, you should put Monmouth on your racetrack bucket list.
Because it's pretty close to the beach, isn't it? One of the New Jersey beaches.
Like normally you can feel kind of that beach breeze, and the track itself is just, it's charming. And yeah, I like being there.
And the Haskell is really cool because that is sort of the first big stakes race for 3-year-olds of the summer. So you see a lot of horses who went through the road to the Triple Crown and might have contested the Derby or the Preakness or the Belmont and took a little break for a while, and they're now coming back to target some of those big summer stakes
I think
races.
We've got Timberlake coming, Fierceness, I believe, several Todd Pletcher horses. So yeah, it's possible that we will potentially see this year's Breeders' Cup Classic champion run. Who knows?
So cool. Yeah, in Amplify World today, first, let me say, we just wrapped up with Breyerfest. So if anybody has not been to Breyerfest, that is a really, really fun experience of, a lot of youth and young adults and even adults who just love horses. And, maybe they have a horse and many of them don't. And it gives them an opportunity to be able to, own a horse in a way, and these beautiful model horses, but then meet some of the horses that they were modeled after, and then come to the Amplify booth and learn how to ride a racehorse, which we're rolling right into the United States Pony Club's championships and festival this upcoming week. So I was out setting up for that this morning, and my heart just about exploded seeing all the ponies walking around the grounds of the Kentucky Horse Park. And next week off to Iowa for a conference in the Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, HBPA conference, to present all the things, Caitlin.
We've got Saratoga. Saratoga has started, so I think I will be spending a little bit of time up there later in August. I'm sure you might be around as well, Anise. Always love going to Saratoga, although I've already been there once this summer for Belmont. But
amazing.
Yeah. Well,
so many fun things going on.
Today's this episode's guest was absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to have listeners check out everything that she had to say, because she was just such a source of positive energy and enthusiasm and perseverance and dedication. And she is, you have worked with her a lot, but she's a 27-year-old female trainer, racehorse trainer. And Anise, you want to give us a little bit of background on her, because you know her better than I do, but I was so thrilled to be able to get to know her through this episode.
Yeah, so Jade Cunningham and I met probably through a mutual friend in racing at some point, and she has this really vibrant energy, whether you're talking to her on a call as we were today or through a recording or in person. She's always radiating that energy and has been an assistant and an exercise rider to many notable trainers, has worked her way up through the industry. The story of how her whole family essentially started in racing together with her mom and her sister and her is really fascinating. So I'm excited for listeners to hear that. But then, the way that she describes challenges she's faced along the way and how she overcame them, to now having her own racing stable and having to go out and source horses and new owners, is really fascinating. So I think listeners are really going to enjoy today's episode. Welcome, Jade Cunningham, to the Amplify Horse Racing podcast. We are so excited to be finally joined by Jade today on the podcast. If you follow Amplify's social media, you're probably familiar with her already, in that she's a young trainer who's been really welcoming to us being able to follow her on race days, educate about what a day in the life is like of a trainer when you're bringing a horse up to the front side, getting them ready for a race, and then what happens post-race as well. So we're really excited to finally be able to interview you, Jade. Welcome. Thanks so much for being on with us.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes, welcome. It's so nice to meet you. I'm not sure that we've ever met in person. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to have you on. Women trainers are the best.
And it's extra cool. Not that we, always highlight age on the podcast, but I will say, Jade, you're 27, right?
27, yes.
So that's really, really cool, because I think a lot of times when people envision a thoroughbred trainer, not being ageist in any way, but just saying, you typically envision an older male, probably 50, 60 plus.
Yeah, 20, 30 years of, if not more, experience.
Yeah. And you're 27, you're female, you're breaking that mold of what a trainer typically looks like, but you also bring a ton of experience to the table in that you've been an assistant to multiple different, very what's the word I'm looking for? Well-known, significant trainers, names who people, even those who aren't super familiar with the industry, might understand, such as Hall of Famer Dwayne Lukas and trainer Dallas Stewart. But Jade, I really don't know a lot about how you first got into the industry. So how did horses come into your life?
Horses have always been there. My mom actually ran a riding stable in Tennessee for a while, strictly for females, so that they had like a safe place to go and learn how to ride.
Wow.
Yeah, it was unique. Most of the things my mom does is unique. But then to go with my mother being unique, my sister decided she wanted to ride racehorses, and we started going up to the Thoroughbred Center in Lexington, which is a training center. And my sister started learning how to gallop there. And up to the barns, actually, in the field, there was a trainer, Jennifer. I'm not sure her last name. I don't remember. I was 11. And then as my sister was doing that and we were spending time in Kentucky, my mother ended up meeting my stepdad, who rode races, Artie Williams. And then she started training racehorses. And then I did not like it. I was like, because I just wanted to go home, right? Like, very unique, change of scenery. And I was like, I just want to go home. I hate this. And we spent a lot of years doing that. And then I ended up galloping for Danny Pish. And when I started galloping, I just totally fell in love with the sport. I was like, this is great. Like, look how much you can teach these animals. This is so much fun. And so that's when I fell in love with it. And then my family actually ended up moving back to Tennessee. And then I kind of just journeyed out on my own and started figuring out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it and to what degree.
That is so interesting. So you're with your mom, teaching riding lessons. I'm curious to know what was her impression of the industry as she first learned about it? Did she have a lot of knowledge about racing before you guys made that trip to Kentucky, or was it pretty new to her as well as you and your sister were getting involved? Like, was it also a learning experience for your mom?
No, it was definitely a learning experience for her. We had no clue what we were doing, no clue about anything. She literally just walked into a barn and was like, "Hey, my daughter wants to ride racehorses." And I guess she walked into the right barn because it was a female trainer, and she's like, "Sure, I can do that." And they started putting a. I look back now as someone who gallops, and I'm like, the fact that my sister did not die is something else. It was definitely not the safe, correct way to learn how to gallop. And in fact, my sister did end up she got ran off with in that field, and a couple things happened. Nothing major, but a couple things. She was like, "I don't want to do this." She ponies now and works for a vet in Oklahoma with quarter horses and was an assistant quarter horse trainer. So she came around to love it as well, but galloping was not. She was like, so.
But I love it. So you're from a very horsey family, and it sounds like everybody was like very involved right from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so, yeah, my mom had no clue and literally bought an off the track racehorse for my sister to learn how to gallop on. Someone convinced her to breeze the horse, then convinced her to run the horse, like all the things that you probably should not do, like not the correct way to handle things. But she was learning, and we learned with her, and no one got injured and no animals got injured. So it was good. It was a good learning experience.
So in hindsight, because you mentioned, that with your experience you have now, you probably wouldn't recommend somebody do it the same way. Talk our listeners and viewers through what the process is of learning to become an exercise rider if you're new to the track and that's a pathway that you want to follow.
A great place to go is Ocala. You're usually going to end up on babies, but you're at a farm. It's a little bit safer because you're at a farm, you're in a controlled location. There's usually someone there to teach you. That's really good. For me specifically, unlike my sister, I ran across a trainer, Danny Pish, who also has a farm. He's a great person to reach out to. Also, honestly, he's in Texas. And he was very willing to teach me in a controlled environment on safe horses, didn't just put me on anything and everything, but in a controlled environment. And so I think that if you're trying to do it now, that would be the way. Ocala, that's where a lot of people learn now. As you go to Ocala, Florida, go to one of the farms and you just start talking to people.
To be on a private farm where they're all going out in sets and it's very like routine and organized, as opposed to being on the racetrack, which even for spectators, it's like I kind of think of it as like it's like competing or lessening at home versus being in a warm-up ring at a horse show where it's just kind of like anything goes.
So the thing, like so my sister was in just a random field with no fence was like her deal that I was like, that's not probably safe. And to point it at a highway, like if you ever drive into the Thoroughbred Center and you look to your left, like there's just a huge open field and the road is like right there. Like that's where she was galloping. But you're not actually supposed to you're not allowed to gallop on the track until you have experience. So you have to find a farm and someone that you trust to teach you and willing to teach you. That you can get yourself in trouble, and you can also lose your license before you get your license if you just try to start on the track. So it is important to go to a farm, talk to people, hey, don't know what I'm doing but would like to, and there's always someone that's willing to help you.
That's some really valuable insight to share, because it is there's a large appeal to the thought of riding racehorses. If somebody can't be a jockey, which I think when people start thinking about careers in the industry, they first think, well, I can be a jockey because that's the most visual, career. It's like the pathway that we all see. And then if they can't be a jockey, they think, well, I still want to ride racehorses, so I'll ride them during morning training. But there is such a process to learning the right way to riding racehorses. And we did an episode earlier this year with Ashlyn Carroll, who's a barn foreman and exercise rides. And she had a great description as well of, you know, the learning experiences that you should have in order to become a good exercise rider. So anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I'm glad that you touched on that, because it's really important to learn the safe and correct way. Because when you get to a track like Saratoga, for example, it's like driving on an interstate, where if you don't know what's going on and the correct way of passing and the right lane that you're supposed to be in, you're going to get hurt, or your horse is going to get hurt, or you're going to get somebody else hurt. So I appreciate you touching on safety.
A method to the madness, and you have to be very comfortable and confident and add the horse into the mix as well before you're prepared to go to the big tracks and do the morning works.
Jade, touching on careers, did you want to be a trainer right away, or did you enjoy exercise riding and think that was going to be something long-term for you? Or how did you find your way into your current role?
So I feel like when my mom was running the riding stable, we would have horses that, of course, you had like levels, right? So the beginner can ride this horse, the medium level can ride this one, the experience. And we had some horses that it would like extremely experienced riders could only ride, and I would take them and I was like, give me 3 weeks, like a beginner will be able to ride this horse. And I just like mess with them, and I really enjoyed training them and teaching them that. And so like I said, when we started on the track, wasn't really my thing. I started as a Hotwalker, which I think is also a great way to learn the ins and out of the racetrack, usually the easiest kind of job to get on the track, but it also gives you experience and also gets you to know people, which is very helpful. But I really, when I started galloping, the trainer I worked under, Danny Pish, was a very good horseman. And so it wasn't a lot of times like gallop hands were just supposed to gallop the horse, but Danny believed that you're more of an assistant on the horse. Like, it is your job to tell me how this horse is thinking, what this horse is feeling. You had to pay a lot of attention and do a lot of detailed work. And I really enjoyed that. And I liked seeing the fruit of that. We had a filly, I Am Jane Doe, and she won against the boys at Sam Houston in a stake race. And I had been riding her up to that race. And I was like, it's so cool to see the fruit of spending time on this horse and truly teaching it, not just jumping on it and galloping around the track and coming back, but really spending time on her. And so that's when I really was like, I would like to train these and be able to have the say of what this horse needs every morning to reach its full potential.
And so at the time, as you were processing that, were you thinking training? Like, did your brain go down that avenue of training? Or did you like the idea of continuing to... Actually, let me skip ahead and ask another question. Do you still ride your racehorses?
Yeah.
Since you're training now, do you get on everything?
Everything. So I haven't had to make that decision yet.
Gotcha. Okay. That's the better question for me to ask. You found this really strong, valuable connection between actually getting on your horses and how that factors into the preparation process, because you are so involved in feeling how they change and getting a good sense of them underneath you. Is that accurate?
Definitely accurate. And then also, there's so many last minute decisions you can make while you're on a horse in the morning, right? So my horse that won 2 weeks ago, Thoroughbred, I went to breeze in 3/8 and I was like, oh, this isn't going to be enough. So I just literally added another furlong on and went a half mile, and I can make that decision when I'm on their back. And they're like, Dallas has gallop hands that have been with him for 12 years and they are capable of making those. But to find a gallop hand that honestly cares enough to do that, it's pretty, and so right now I haven't given up riding. I don't getting hurt tomorrow and then have to, and I will continue to train. The trainer makes the ultimate days with horses, trainer and owner. But I really do enjoy riding and being able to make those last minute decisions. And I think that's benefited especially a horse like Spankster, it's been a fit where I can really just make those last minute decisions.
So you mentioned Dallas. We've talked about Danny Pish. How did you get connected to working for D. Wayne Lukas and Dallas Stewart? It was D. Wayne first, and then Dallas, who you went on to work for?
Yes. So I graduated college, and I was kind of, forced into this industry. So let me go home and see how I feel about this. My family had moved back to Tennessee maybe 5-7 years ago, something like that. So I moved home. It was during COVID, and the whole time I was just like, man, I cannot wait for racetracks to open back up. I want to get back out there. Miss the horses, miss the people, all of it. And so I had a friend, Sam Perry, that was working for Brendan Walsh at Churchill. And she's like, we need a gallop hand. Why don't you come up here? And so she talked to Brendan, and I moved up there, moved everything up there. And 2-3 weeks in, he was like, hey, like, we've lost some horses. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to let you go. And I was just like devastated, because I had been on the track for a lot of years, and I worked for Danny at that time for 5 or 6 years. But that was in Texas, and Texas is moving from a lower level racetrack to a higher level with more better known trainers and more money. It's different. Like, you don't come in with respect. You have to earn it. And so I was like, all right. And I mean, I was just panicked. And I actually had a friend at the time who had worked for Wayne, and I started talking to him, and he's like, you need to go meet Wayne Lukas. He'll give you a job. And the next morning I walked over and was like, hey, I'm here. I'd like to gallop. And he crazily hired me and insulted me for about 2-3 weeks until I started riding the way he liked, because riding in Texas, riding cowboy horses in Texas on the track there, and riding derby horses is different as well. And so he got me where I was doing a good job. And then he gave me some opportunities to kind of fill in as an assistant. He's had an assistant for 30 years. Like, he's not going to replace Bass. But he gave me opportunities. Like, I went to the Preakness with Ram and drove me and Wayne up there and saddled him and ran the barn while I was there. So he gave me a lot of opportunities like that. And then he ended up getting me in with Dallas. Like, he's the one who recommended me to Dallas to be an assistant. It was like another weird phase of my life, and Dallas had offered me a gallop job, and then Dallas also lost horses, and he was like, hey, like, I'm gonna have to let you go. And I just went in his office, and I was like, I love this job. Like, if there's any way you can keep me on, please keep me on. He was like, I can't, like, and I was like, all right. And I just kept showing up, honestly. He was like, you can work through the end of the meet. He was really awesome. He's like, which was like 2 months. Like, he was going to give me a ton of time. And I just I showed up anytime I could. Like, and that's one thing about the track, is it is a lot of work. And if you're the person that's willing to put in the extra mile, you're the one that's going to go a little bit higher. And sometimes that's not rewarding, and it feels like, wow, I'm working so hard and I'm being overlooked, but it is rewarding and it does pay off. And that's why it's hard to find people to work on the track, though, because it is 7 days a week, and the extra mile you go is what really puts you over the edge. So I started showing up. I was working 7 days a week in the morning, and then I would show up every evening for feed time, and I would show up for every race we had. And I was just there. And so he walked in the barn like 2 weeks later and was like, hey, you're taking a string to Oaklawn. And I was like, what? And he's like, you're going to be the assistant at Oaklawn, like, find somewhere to live. And I was like, okay, sounds good. Like, so from fire to running a string for Dallas Stewart. So pretty awesome.
Quite the up and down, but I think it's such a great, especially in this industry, the perseverance factor. You have to have perseverance and not let like one setback or 2 setbacks or 3 setbacks get you down if you're focused on achieving your ultimate goals.
Absolutely.
What do you think was the motivator in that for you, Jade? Like, do you think it was you were young and, just so hungry to succeed? Or like, was it Dallas Stewart himself, and that you were like, I'm going to prove to him and myself that I'm a capable hand and he's going to keep me on? Or like, what kept you going through that in a time when you could have gotten really down on yourself or down about the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard. I think that's the most upset I've ever been with I'd really never been let go until Brendan. And then, cause I've always worked fairly hard. And then Dallas, like, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, God just worked it out. Like, Brendan, I didn't fit in there, but I fit in here. So then when Dallas came, like, I was pretty heartbroken. Mom always raised me that you work for the excellence of God and not for people, which was very helpful in a time like that. And so I just remember I was staying in this little travel trailer, and I would go in and I'd be like bawling. And I was like, I don't know how you're going to make a way, God, but you're going to. And I will not reach wherever you're trying to get me because of my lack of dedication. So I just flipped the script and started going at it even harder. And, he's going to work it out no matter what, but that is how he chose to work it out this time. And I mean, me not working wasn't going to help. So that's kind of just how I felt like that was the only option.
Wow. Man, good on you for look at you now that you kept going and you did persevere, and you were with Dallas for how many years?
2 years.
Wow. And your story really illustrates too the importance of connections in the industry and making a positive impression on everyone you meet, because you don't know how they're going to introduce you to the next person. So, your friend who connected you to Brendan, and then getting connected to Dwayne Lukas. And for our listeners who maybe aren't so familiar with the industry or Dwayne Lukas, he's a Hall of Fame trainer, and he had been I believe a high school basketball coach before he, started training racehorses. But his nickname continues to be the coach because he had all these young assistant trainers who worked for him, who went on to become, many of them, Hall of Fame trainers themselves, or very well-known, very successful trainers in the industry, one of them being Dallas Stewart. And so having that network of connections and showing up for everyone and making a good impression amongst all of those connections is so valuable. And it sounds like that was something that was important to you along the way too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Connections are big, really a big thing in anything in life, but especially on the racetrack, because it's still a lot of it is person on person interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about what you've been doing since going out on your own, and your, recent successes, and what that journey has been like.
It's been up and down. I feel like, so I went out on my own a year ago in 10 days, actually. And it was honestly another God thing. My mother got sick, and I ended up leaving Dallas. And then when I went to come back on the track, I was like, Dallas, I'm going to go try something else, because I had been in the same program, the Wayne Lukas understudy program, for so long. I was like, let me learn some more about claiming horses, is actually where my mind was. I was like, I would like to learn about claiming horses. Dallas nor Wayne really have to have claiming horses. Mm-hmm. And I was like, for me to start on my own, I'm going to need claimers. So claimers are horses that run for a tag. So you can buy them, you can purchase them in the race, and they don't run for as much money. So usually a newer trainer will get horses that are eligible to run, to be purchased when they run, because they're not as nice. And so that's just how you start. And I was like, let me go learn about that side of this industry. So I went up to New Jersey and was working, and the fires were up there. I have asthma. I couldn't breathe. I absolutely did not like the job that I was at. And I was like, I am unhappy, and I'm a pretty happy person. I'm going to leave. And so told the person I was working for, I was like, hey, I'm really sorry. Can I give you like a month's notice, or however long you need to replace me? But when you replace me, can I go ahead and head out? So they found a replacement, and I got going, and I was driving back from New Jersey. No clue what I'm going to do. Just going to figure it out. I had actually reached back out to Dallas, because slightly panicked. And I was like, hey, like, I'm coming back to Kentucky if you need someone. And he's like, Jade, like, we're good. And I was like, yeah, I figured, just wanted to let you know. And so I was like, I want to train, and, like, going off at God, right? And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I thought you told me to come here. So I'm driving back, and my phone rings, and it's an owner that I know from Dallas and Wayne. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, driving back from New Jersey to Kentucky. He's like, perfect. When you get to Kentucky, there's a horse that I want you to go get. Wayne no longer wants to train the horse. And I said, well, let me call Wayne, get approval, and see if that's okay. So I call Wayne, and Wayne's like, I mean, if you want to take the horse, that's fine. This is why I don't want to train her, whatever. And I was like, okay. So I called the owner back, and I was like, I'll get her tomorrow. So just totally random phone call. And I go and get her, and was able to train her and ran her a couple times. She's a broodmare now. So and then you're just constantly trying to grow your clientele and get people to trust you with your horses. And I think one of the great things that I do offer is still getting on them myself, which I think like for Dallas, it's a benefit to not get on them. He's able to watch all of his horses. He has good enough help that he doesn't need to get on them, things of that nature. But starting off, it's very helpful. A lot of the owners like for me to be like, hey, like, I breezed this horse myself this morning. This is what I felt. This is how it's doing. This is the kind of race I think the horse fits in. They really enjoy that. So I'm selling myself all the time, right? And I've been really, really blessed in the way every owner that has came to me has just been a random, crazy God thing. There hasn't really been one that a lot of times. So like Dallas was given an owner when he left Wayne, but he was with Wayne for like 14 years. And I didn't do that. I decided to go out on my own to them after only 3 years, right? Because I'd only been in Kentucky for 3 years. I had been on the track since I was 11. I'd been an assistant for Danny Pish for 7 years. But to them, it had been 3 years. And so I just like up and went out on my own. And so I had to get all the owners myself. And fortunately, I got enough. And then actually recently, Dallas has sent me a couple horses and a couple owners up here to Indiana. But I think he wanted to see if I was going to pursue it and stick with it first, which is totally respectable. So, I've just been working towards growing, but also don't want to grow too fast either, because getting good help can be a little difficult. So it's a constant balance of, do I want 7 more horses or, and I want to do it correctly. So you're growing slowly. And I think that's a huge blessing.
I actually didn't know this. Is that a common practice in the industry? If you have a really good assistant who decides to go out on their own, that the head trainer will try to give them an owner, or so that like happens commonly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have
That's
to,
very cool.
Yeah, it's really awesome. You have to put in a pretty good amount of time with that person. And to be honest with you, I've mostly heard this from Wayne's people and Wayne himself, but Pletcher, he's rambled off the trainers and the owners that he's given. But I think as a whole, that is, when you respect your assistant and know that they're going to go out on their own at some point in time, you try to help them, especially once they've done their due diligence.
That's so cool, because I think of,
it's a very great way in the industry to like perpetuate young talent.
Yes. That's a really good way of putting it, because so many, I know that non-compete policies are sort of going away overall, but there are a lot of other industries that used to really stand strongly by non-competes, where if somebody would leave and start their own thing, that they couldn't bring clients with them. So It's so cool to think that in racing, if you work really hard for someone and you prove yourself and you nurture that relationship as well, and they believe in you, that they might actually just give you a client.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, I certainly learned something new today. So the other day I ran into Jade at a sale here in Lexington. It was the July Horses of Racing Age sale at Fasig-Tipton. And we talked a little bit, or I actually grabbed Jade and was like, hey, speak to this group of young people and educate them, which you were so lovely in sharing of your time, and you spoke so well to them. But share on the podcast from a trainer's perspective, when you go to sales like that, what is the sales environment like for you as a trainer? Are you just kind of looking around, or do you have clients or owners who will tell you that they're looking for something specific? Or will you find something that you like and then go back and tell your owners, hey, I really like this horse, you might want to consider this?
I think it all depends kind of where you are. So Wayne always says that he lives on scholarships. So he'll buy a horse and then he'll call people and be like, you should want to share on this horse. And then, it's Wayne Lukas. Like, if Wayne likes the horse, it's probably worth having. For me specifically, so the OBS sale in June, we bought 2 horses, and the owner had told me, like, I'm looking for horses. I don't want any grass horses because we go to Oaklawn in the winter and there is no turf course at Oaklawn. And he's like, so don't want grass horses, would prefer a boy. Like, he kind of told me some things he wanted. Then he's like, all right, go. This is how much you want to spend. All right, go. And so that's how I handled that sale. The sale that I saw you at, I was just kind of trying to be seen, letting people know that I'm training. I still care. I'm actively out there. I'm still pursuing this. I'm still at the barn every day. This is what I'm doing, because there are a lot of, do I need to stop? Oh. There are a lot of trainers that start and it's difficult, and they'll stop or their owners won't pay them quick enough, and then so I just want people to know that I am still pursuing this and I'm out there. So that is what every sale kind of has a different dynamic for me right now because I'm just starting out.
That's fantastic though. But I think when sometimes people think of horse trainers, they think of people who kind of work in silos. They work with the horses, not the people. But it's just reiterating the importance of relationships and networking and great communication skills. And that's, what you're showcasing when you're at the sales, talking to people.
Absolutely.
I'm actually curious because Jade, you're always so inviting for people, like very approachable. I'll say you're always smiling. You're very easy to talk to. But I can imagine, I know that you have a lot of great connections in the industry already, but being in an environment, especially when you're a young new trainer, being in an environment like the sales, when you're trying to sell yourself and network and hopefully bring in new clients, that could be intimidating in some ways. So maybe it's not for you, but do you ever get nervous in those settings? And if so, how do you overcome that to, bring out your best self and hopefully bring in those new clients?
No, literally every time I get freaked out when I go to a sale because so the OBS June sale I did online. I couldn't leave Indiana. I didn't have enough help, so I did it online. So that wasn't a challenge. But the Saratoga sale, I went with Dallas, and Saratoga sale is very inviting to all of the people, and it's way more laid back. Like, it's not just horse humans there. But when I went to Facing last week, I was very nervous. I was like, all right. And there's so many people that I see. And so, like, Mike Maker's there, right? And he knows enough about me, right? And I'm just like, I don't belong here. Like, Maker's here. What am I doing here? I don't belong here. But then you have to walk like you belong there, or else the owner's going to be like, well, if she doesn't think she belongs here, why wouldn't I go with Maker? And so, because one of the things I did learn is giving a cheaper rate does not benefit your owner. And so they have to actually trust you, because if you give a cheaper rate, your horses aren't getting as good at care. And because that's what it stems down to, the day rate covers the feed, the hay, the straw, and you have to decide what quality you can afford, honestly, as the trainer. And so it doesn't benefit your owners to just have a super cheap day rate. You have to be able to sell yourself. Like, you have to be able to sell yourself for almost as much as the bigger guys are going for. And so they have to be able to trust you. So if you don't trust yourself, why would they trust you? And so when I don't feel like I trust myself and I am nervous, like I said, was raised a really strong Christian. So just walk around with the confidence of being a child of God and move on with it is really all I can do. So we ended up bidding on a Maker horse actually at the sale, and he was like across the ring, and I was like, what if there's something wrong with this horse and he knows it, and then he just thinks I'm stupid because I'm trying to bid on this horse? Like, your brain goes places. And I was like, okay, well, what if you get the horse and you run better than he did with it? You know, like you have to think about the positives that could happen too. I mean, I've been really fortunate and blessed. I've been able to take time with horses, and most of the horses I've received, not all of them, but a lot of the horses I've received, their numbers have gone up. So their numbers that are in the program that kind of say how they're running and where they belong, most of them have gone up. So you got to allow yourself to not be arrogant, but to see the accomplishments you have accomplished.
It's interesting. I recently finished a book by an author named Cara Lowenthal. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. But a concept that she talks a lot about in the book is that your thoughts create your emotions, which lead to your actions. And when you're having negative thoughts or that imposter syndrome creeps up and you think, well, what if he knows something about the horse that I don't, and I do, really poorly with it, and then he's laughing at me? Like that thought leads to that feeling or that emotion of insecurity and nerves, which can lead to then you potentially not buying this horse that maybe would run really well for you, would run better for you, So having that positive thought of what if that horse runs better for me than it has for anybody else? So I'm going to do great. Let's buy it.
That's all you can do.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I'm so proud of you, Jade, and very impressed at, your bravery and your confidence and positivity and staying really strong to yourself. So what's next for Jade Cunningham in your career?
I don't know. I think the biggest thing is, so we're at Indiana right now. I've got 8 horses that are in training at the moment. Wow. And like I said, kind of Indiana, it's a little hard to get help up here. So a lot of the grooms, they don't have vehicles. And so they want to be at tracks where they can walk to the grocery store. And unfortunately here, that's not something that is possible. So the grooms either need vehicles or family here, or there's a bus that goes to Walmart once a week. But if you think about getting out of somewhere once a week, that's not really a lot. So it's kind of hard to get help up here, but I am hoping to go to Oaklawn and to grow a little bit. Of course, you're always trying to improve the quality of horses you have, because everyone's dreams to be in stakes races and allowance races. So no longer my horse is up for a tag and running for more money is always the dream. But I'm very grateful for the 8 horses I have, and and the owners. My owners are awesome too. So we'll just keep being diligent with what we have and keep growing as it happens.
Am I allowed to ask, do you have a favorite horse?
Yeah. Spangster. He won my first race, and then so I've won 5 races and he's won 2 of them.
Wow.
And yeah, and he's not a claimer, so he doesn't have to go in for a tag. He's actually won both of those races in allowances, which is where they are not allowed to buy the horse, and they run for more money.
Yeah.
And he's just very opinionated and a lot of personality. And I bought him, and no one had any faith in this horse, and was just like, he's partially what gives me confidence when I'm at sales, because Dallas had this horse. I had the horse as a 2-year-old, and nothing really special about him. There was nothing about this horse that I was just like, oh my gosh, he's going to be so great. Like, I literally I had 2 horses at the time, and I knew that I was losing one of them. And I was like, I got to grow my barn. And so I just started looking for horses that I knew that had some talent, but weren't really around anymore, to see if I could purchase them. And Spangster had ended up in a field in Ocala. I reached out to the trainer, and he was like, I can't get any run out of this horse. I don't really want to deal with him anymore. I sent him to a farm. Reached out to the owner and was like, I would like to purchase him. He's like, I don't really have any use for him. That's fine. Purchased him, brought him up, and it took me about 3 or 4 months. He had only had 2 months off of racing, and it took me about 3 or 4 months to get him back where I felt comfortable running him. And the first time I ran him, I was very much insulted for the race that I ran him in by multiple people. And the rider, Julian, rode him, and Julian Leperoux is a very big time rider. He rides the Derby. And so really appreciate that he rode for me, but you could tell the way he rode the horse that he didn't have any confidence in where I put the horse, which was fair. Like, he didn't know me very well. Like, here we are. And so Spankster came back and he was literally trying to murder all of us. He was very angry. He had not ran his race. He would not drink water. He was angry. And so if you look back at the races he had ran in, he had been running long and I had put him in short. I felt like short was the best for this horse. I had put him in a shorter race. And so in my mind, I'm like, Spankster was literally just waiting for Julian to tell him to go. Like, he had no clue that they were going to stop that soon. So this is my mind. It doesn't make any sense, but this is where my mind is. And so I enter him back and I put the bug boy on him. And the bug boy and I are pretty good friends, Joseph Belmer.
And a bug boy is an apprentice.
Oh, sorry.
I'll add that.
So
Apprentice jockey.
So they get
who hasn't won a race yet, right?
No, they get on a weight allowance. So it encourages trainers to ride them. So they'll start off as they'll carry 10 pounds less than any of the other riders. And that's like a trainer's incentive to ride them. I personally don't really believe in the weight allowance. I personally don't think it helps, but I knew that this rider trusted me more than the last one. So I was like, let's try it. Let's run this horse. And I ran him in a little bit easier of a race, but it still wasn't a race where he was able to be purchased. So it was still a pretty high-end race. Mm-hmm. And he was literally 6 lengths behind the field the entire race, going 5.5 furlongs, which is not very long. Like, 6 is kind of your average 6.5. And then there's, of course, a mile. And he had been doing a mile. And so 5.5, like, you're usually out of the gates in the front and you're going. And he was 6 lengths behind the field. And I was like, okay, well, this horse isn't what I thought he was. Like, this sucks. And he turned for home and turned for the wire. And I don't know what happened, but he won by maybe a length, something like that. And he won. And then every time I ran him back, he's performed really well. He tries really hard. He likes his job. So he's definitely my favorite.
Wow. That's fantastic. And what a great, I mean, this entire episode, like, just what great motivation and inspiration to just always, like, keep believing in yourself and keep believing that, you know, a God or someone has a plan for you. And that if you keep the faith and you keep the positivity, that, you know, that's going to come back to you.
Absolutely.
Again, Jade, thank you so much. We're rooting for you. I'm so proud of you, and, you know, anything that Team Amplify can do to help you, or, you know, we appreciate what you've given us with your time and educating others through our videos and at the events that we see you at. So I wish you the very best of luck, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
It was so lovely to meet you.